The first time I heard a human child laugh, I mistook it for distress. On Deep Drift Station, sound carried strangely through the bulkheads. The station's ribs were old alloy, warm to the touch in some corridors, cold enough to bite in others, depending on which coolant loops were behaving. When the ventilation fans surged, they made a wail-low moan that set the softer-bodied species' frills trembling. And when the docking clamps engaged, the vibration traveled through the soles in a way you felt in your teeth. I was standing at the observation blister, watching freighters drift like fat insects toward the ring, when the sound came bright, sharp, irregular. It cut through the ambient hum like a thrown shard. I turned, my throat sacs tightening. My translator implant offered possibilities: alarm, injury call, mating display, none fit. It was wrong in its rhythm, too chaotic to be a signal, too honest to be practiced. Then a small human emerged from the access corridor with two others, the gate bouncy under the station's mid-gravity. The smallest wore a patch pressure suit with stickers and a helmet too big, the bubble reflecting the corridor lights like tiny moons. The child's mouth was open, showing flat teeth, and the sound poured out again. A human adult, female tall, with dark hair tied back and a wrench clipped to her belt, walked behind them with the unhurried posture of someone who trusted the metal around her. She glanced at my stiffened stance and lifted a hand in greeting. "Sorry," she said through the station's common audio. "They're excited, first time seeing a real ring dock." The child pointed at the window, fingers splayed, as if trying to catch the drifting ships. "It's huge," the child breathed. "It's like a bracelet for space." The adult's eyes softened. "Don't press your helmet on the glass, Eli." Eli laughed again, a wild little burst. My translator finally settled. Laughter. I remember thinking in that moment that the Galactic Council's first law made sense. Don't attack human children. It wasn't written in our old sacred texts. It wasn't carved into temple pylons. It was newer than the Council itself, born out of data, casualties, and fear so thick it had to be shaped into a rule before it swallowed the galaxy whole. The first law was not a moral law. It was a survival law. And still, the Council broke it. Council Chamber, Orbit of Vera. The Veran Council Chamber was designed to humble. It floated above the planet like a polished seed, its outer skin a shifting pattern of mirrored plates that refracted starlight into 1,000 soft blades. Inside, the air was layered, each species, comfort zone overlapping in invisible strata. The humidity clung in some tiers, dried your eyes in others. Pheromone scrubbers ticked faintly behind the walls, clicking like patient insects. I stood at the witness dais, my forelimbs folded tight against my thorax, trying not to let my frill flare. I am a Halith, built for the currents of shallow seas, 6 limbs, 2 for delicate tasks, 4 for stance, gill slits along my ribs that ache when the air is too dry. My species learned diplomacy because we had to. Our young are born blind and soft, and the galaxy is full of predators with polite mouths. My name is Sale. I served as liaison to the human delegation for 3 cycles. Long enough to think I understood them, long enough to be wrong in ways that would bruise me later. Above me, the council sat in a crescent of elevated seats. The older species claimed the higher perches, as if gravity itself should favor their age. The chair of the tribunal, Archcouncillor Ruvik of the Keth, leaned forward, his cranial crest catching the chamber's pale light. Ruvik was the kind of being who could look still while feeling nothing. His species was stone-shelled, with 3 eyes set deep in a triangular socket. When he blinked, it was slow, like a shutter closing on a world he already owned. "Witness Sale of Halith," Ruvik intoned. "You are here to recount events at Deep Drift Station, Cycle 44.17, during the so-called nursery strike." A ripple moved through the chamber, fins flexing, antennae twitching, tendrils curling. The translator network softened the sound into a low susurrus, but I could still taste the tension in the air. My frill wanted to flare. I forced it down. "I am here," I said, "because I was present." "And because you were attached to the human presence there," Ruvik added. I hesitated. "Yes." To my left, the human delegation sat in a plain row, no elevated seat, no atmosphere adjustment beyond what the chamber allowed. They didn't complain. They never complained about discomfort in the way the others did. Their lead was present in person, which already marked the day as strange. Ambassador Mara Chen sat with her hands folded, her spine straight but not rigid. Her eyes were tired in a way that looked carved into her skull. Her hair was threaded with silver. Her face, to my still unsteady sense of human expression, carried calm like a shield. Behind her sat two other humans in formal black, and one in a technician's jumpsuit, patched, stained, the kind worn by people who lived inside machinery rather than inside politics. She was younger than Chen, maybe midlife for a human. Her hands were scarred. Her gaze was fixed on the council, with the steady attention of a predator choosing where to step. That was Juno Kessler, chief systems engineer of the human Archship Emberling. The council had tried to keep her off record. Humans had insisted she be here. Ruvik's voice echoed again. You will speak only truth. Any attempt to mislead this tribunal will result in sanctions against your homeworld's trade routes. It was an old threat. Humans would have laughed if they laughed here. I swallowed. I will speak truth, I said. Ruvik lifted a clawed hand. Begin with the first law. My frill trembled despite me. The first law of the galaxy was not officially called that. It had a longer designation, Article 1, Clause 0, Emergency Interspecies Deterrence Protocol. But in the corridors and mess halls, in the quiet comms between captains, it was simply the first law. Don't attack human children. Because the last time someone did, the humans burned a star lane so thoroughly that even now, 50 cycles later, ships avoided the region as if the vacuum remembered pain. And still, someone had attacked. Deep Drift Station, I began, was a mixed-species port on the edge of the Emberline corridor. It hosted maintenance crews, supply exchanges, and— Spare us the brochure, snapped Councillor Talvek of the Sorn, the secondary voice in the tribunal, whose species, skin shimmered with nervous chromatophores. Talvek represented the bias in this room, the fear polished into law. Tell us about the children. My gill slits tightened. Humans do not keep their young hidden, I said, and felt the first cultural assumption crack in the room. Many species here do. We keep our larvae in protected nurseries, sealed and guarded, because predators target them. Humans brought theirs openly, in family groups, into public corridors. They treated the station like a home. Talvek's colors flashed in disgust and disbelief. Reckless. Chen's lips twitched, human micro-expression, perhaps irritation. She didn't speak. And the council permitted it, Ruvik said, almost accusingly. The council encouraged human settlement, I replied. The Emberline corridor needed stabilizing. Humans are adaptable. That word carried weight. I saw a few species shift, uncomfortably. Adaptable was what you called a thing that survived where it should not. Ruvik's middle eye narrowed. Then tell us what happened. My memory, despite my effort to keep it ordered, came as sensory shards. The smell of hot polymer in maintenance Bay 14 where humans welded without complaint in air too thin for most of us. The way human boots struck the deck plates with confident thuds. The taste of ozone after a shuttle's thrusters flared too close to the station's skin. And the sound, always the sound, of a child laughing and later screaming. It began, I said, with a ship that should not have been there. Deep Drift Station, outer approach. The ship arrived without transponder. That alone should have triggered the station's lockdown. But Deep Drift had seen smugglers, pirates, drifters. The outer defenses were not council grade, they were practical. A few rail turrets, some point defense lasers, a swarm of old drones whose software updates came late. I was in the comm hub when the contact appeared on the holo, an angular silhouette sliding out of the dark, running cold. It didn't broadcast identity. It didn't request dock clearance. It just came in on a vector that said it expected to be obeyed. Unknown vessel, the station RE announced in flat tones. Trajectory intersects ring dock in 8 minutes. The duty officer, a brittle-voiced Traxian with feathered arms, fluttered in agitation. Hail it. No response. The The Traxians' pupils contracted. Rays shields. Deep drift shields were thin, more for micrometeorites than war. Still, they shimmered faintly around the station, a barely visible ripple of light across the observation blister. I remember glancing at the human quarter doors on the far side of the concourse. Children had been playing there, pushing a gravity ball along the floor. Their laughter had echoed like broken bells. Juno Kessler arrived at the comm hub before any human diplomat did. She moved with purpose, wiping grease from her hands onto her jumpsuit as if she'd been pulled straight out of an engine cavity. She didn't ask permission to enter, she simply did, and the Traxian officer, after one startled flutter, allowed it. "What is it?" she asked, voice calm. "Unknown vessel," I said. "No transponder." Juno leaned toward the hollow, her eyes narrowed, not in fear but in focus. "That's not a trader," she said softly. "Too clean, too quiet." The Traxian bristled. "We have procedures." Juno nodded once, like she'd heard a child recite a lesson. "Sure, do your procedures. But where's your nearest shelter bulkhead?" The Traxian blinked. "Why?" "Because if it fires," Juno said, "your concourse is a straight corridor full of civilians and you've got glass." She looked at me then, and there was something in her gaze that made my gill slits flare in involuntary alarm. It was not aggression, it was readiness. "Sail," she said. She remembered my name. "Where are the kids?" "Human residential ring," I answered. "Sector C." "Get them off the ring," Juno said. "Now." The Traxian's feathers lifted. "You cannot order." Juno did not raise her voice. She did not threaten. She simply looked at the officer as if the universe itself had already decided. "I'm not ordering you," she said. "I'm telling you what happens next if you don't." The station RE chimed again. "Unknown vessel range, 0.9 light seconds." Then the unknown ship fired. It wasn't a missile. It wasn't a rail slug. It was a focused gravitic pulse, a weapon most species used for disabling, not killing, a wave that could overload shields and crush hull seams if tuned wrong. Deep Drift's shield flickered, and for a half-second the light across the observation blister flared bright blue, painting everyone's faces in ghost color. The deck shuddered. The air pressure dipped, a momentary breath sucked from lungs and gills alike, and somewhere down the corridor, a human child screamed. Juno was already moving. "Lock down Sector C," she snapped to the RE. "Seal the ring." The Traxian officer stammered. "The RE cannot take commands from." "Emergency override," Juno said, and slapped her palm onto the console. The RE paused, fractional, then spoke. "Override accepted, verifying biometric authority." Juno's eyes flicked to me. "Sail, run." I ran. Residential ring, Sector C. Humans decorated their corridors. Most species on deep drift kept the walls bare, because decoration was a waste of mass and a potential hazard in emergencies. Humans ignored that assumption. Their walls were painted with murals, stars, whales, bright geometric shapes. Their doors had nameplates. Their floors had scuff marks from shoes and toys. When I reached Sector C, the corridor smelled of recycled air mixed with something warm, human food, spices that made my gills sting. Lights were dimmed to a soft amber, which humans claimed calmed their young. It made the place feel like a den. The first bulkhead was closing, slow, as if the station itself hesitated to cut this section off. Civilians were gathered, confused, some holding children. I saw Eli, helmet still too large, clutching a small plush animal under one arm. The human adult from earlier, Eli's mother, stood with her body angled toward the bulkhead, protective. "What's happening?" she demanded when she saw my Haleth uniform. "Unknown attack," I said, voice shaking despite me. "We need to move you to shelter." A human child, another one, maybe 8 cycles old, stared at me with wide eyes. "Are we gonna die?" The question was asked plainly. No flailing, no screeching, just a child wanting a true answer. My throat sacs tightened. My culture did not speak of death to larvae. We lied to protect them. We hid them from the concept as long as possible. Humans did not. Not if we do this right, I said, because it was the only honest answer I had. The bulkhead finally sealed with a heavy clang. The sound vibrated through my ribs. The corridor lights flickered as power rerouted. In the dim, I saw Juno Kessler at the far end, sprinting, her boots hammering the deck. She slid to a stop near the shelter hatch and shouted, "Move, move, move." Humans moved. They formed lines, not because someone ordered them like a herd, but because they did it instinctively. Adults took positions along the corridor edges, making a human wall. Children were pushed toward the shelter hatch, the air filled with breath sounds, with the scrape of boots, with the faint whine of servos as the shelter door opened. Another grav pulse hit the station. The deck lurched. The lights went out for a heartbeat, and in that darkness the only sound was human breathing and one child's low sob. When the lights returned, Juno was at the shelter console, fingers flying. She didn't look panicked. She looked like a mechanic inside a fire. "Sail," she barked without turning. "How many non-human kids in this ring?" I blinked. "None, humans only." "Good," she said, and then quieter, almost to herself. "That makes it simpler." Simpler, that word should have chilled me. I did not understand it yet. The shelter door sealed. Inside, the space was cramped, lined with fold-down seats and emergency rations. It smelled of plastic and old sweat. Humans packed in without complaint, pressing together. Children clung to parents. Someone began humming, a low tune, steady, meant to anchor. Eli looked at Juno through the crowd. "Miss Juno," the child said, voice muffled by helmet. "Is it pirates?" Juno crouched so her face was level with the child's bubble helmet. She tapped the helmet lightly with her knuckle. "Could be," she said, "but pirates usually want stuff, not kids, so we're gonna assume it's something worse, and we're gonna be ready." Eli's eyes widened. "Worse than pirates?" Juno smiled, small, tight. "Yeah, but we're humans." The child's fear didn't vanish, but something changed in their posture, like a spine straightening. "We're humans." It was the first time I heard that phrase used like an oath. Com Hub, Deep Drift Station. The unknown vessel did not attempt to board. It stayed at range and fired again and again, grav pulses timed to stress the station's shields. It wasn't trying to kill quickly. It was trying to break deep drift slowly, to force systems offline, to make the station's own structure betray it. "They're playing us," Juno said, returning to the comm hub with her hair damp with sweat. "They're mapping our shield response." The Traxian officers' feathers trembled. "We have sent distress to Council Patrol." "How long?" Juno asked. 3 hours minimum." Juno's jaw tightened. "We don't have 3 hours." I watched the holo. Each pulse made the shield bubble shimmer weaker. The station I's voice grew strained, as if even the machine felt the pressure. Then the unknown ship transmitted. A narrowband burst, hard-coded, that forced itself into our comm speakers. The voice that came through was translated into flat common, but the cadence beneath was harsh, clicking Keth. "The same species as Arch-Councilor Ruvik. Deep Drift Station," the voice said. "This is Council Enforcement Vessel Vera's Hand. You will surrender the human juveniles in Sector C. You will comply with quarantine. You will not transmit further distress." The comm hub went silent. My gill slits burned. "Council Enforcement," I whispered. The Traxian officer's feathers collapsed in horror. "That cannot be. Council ships do not." Juno's face went very still. "They're not Council," she said softly. The voice returned. "Failure to comply will result in structural collapse and loss of life. This is lawful enforcement under emergency protocol." Talvek in the tribunal would later call it necessary, but in that moment, in the comm hub, it sounded like madness. "Why?" the Traxian officer croaked. "Why the children?" The answer came without hesitation. Human reproduction vector. Human settlement expansion. Prevent future conflict. Remove the seed. I felt my frill flare fully now, helpless to stop it. Remove the seed. The words tasted like salt and rot. Juno leaned toward the console and pressed transmit. "This is Deep Drift Station Systems Engineer Juno Kessler," she said, voice calm enough to frighten me. "You are ordering us to hand over children." "Affirmative," the Keth voice replied. "Comply." Juno inhaled slow. "No," she said, a pause, then a click of irritation. "Engineer, you are not authorized." "I don't care what you authorize," Juno said. "You want the kids, you come through me." The Traxian officer hissed. "You will provoke them." Juno glanced sideways. "Good." The Keth voice returned, colder. "Then you will watch your station break." Juno's hand hovered over a different panel, one I had never seen used. "Sail," she said quietly, without looking at me. "How good is your memory?" "Adequate," I managed. "Good," she said. "Because if we live, I need you to tell the galaxy what happened here." I did not understand then that she was already planning for a world after. Maintenance Bay 14, Deep Drift Station. Juno dragged me with her to Maintenance Bay 14 as the station shook under another pulse. The bay was a cathedral of machinery, support struts, dangling cables, the smell of lubricants that made my gills sting. Human tools were scattered like metal bones across the deck. A half-disassembled shield capacitor hung from a crane, its coils exposed like the ribs of some mechanical beast. In the center of the bay sat a human device I had been told was harmless, a compact ring of superconductive material strapped into a cradle, surrounded by warning placards in multiple languages. Human engineers had called it a fold stabilizer prototype. A thing meant to smooth the edges of jump lanes, to reduce turbulence in hyperspatial folds. An impossible solution, many had said. Humans had built it anyway. Juno ran her hand over the ring as if it were an old friend. Her fingers left faint grease marks. "You're going to use that?" I said, voice thin. "I'm going to do something with it," Juno replied. "Depends how much time we have." The station shuddered again. A shower of dust fell from overhead vents. Somewhere distant, an alarm wailed in a frequency that made my frill quiver. "What can it do?" I asked. Juno's eyes flicked to me. "Officially, it can stabilize a fold. Unofficially, it can pinch one." I stared, not fully understanding. She exhaled and tried again, simpler. "You know how your species uses current nets," she said, "to guide schools of fish. You don't stop the ocean, you shape the flow." I nodded. "Fold space is a flow," she said. "Most species treat it like sacred water. You dip a ship in, you pray it comes out. Humans don't pray, we measure, we push. And if someone tries to hurt our kids..." Her voice trailed off, her jaw clenched. "The first law," I whispered. Juno's gaze hardened. "Yeah, that one." She turned to the bay's console and began typing. "Juno," I said, "the council will say you escalated." She didn't look up. "They already escalated, they fired first." "But..." She slammed a panel shut, the sound ringing. "Sail, you think this is about pride. It's not. It's about a rule every species agreed to because they were terrified of what we'd do if it was broken." She finally looked at me, eyes bright with a kind of tired fury. "And now it's broken," she said. "So we either die politely or we show them why the rule exists." My gill slits flared, pulling in air that tasted of metal and fear. "What are you going to do?" I asked. Juno's hands moved again, fast. "I'm going to build a wall out of physics." Council chamber, orbit of Vera. In the tribunal, Talvek leaned forward, colors shifting sharply. "You claim the attacking vessel demanded children. You claim it spoke of removing the seed. Yet council enforcement would never use such language." Chen's voice was quiet, but it carried. "And yet here we are." Ruvik's crest lifted slightly, a gesture that in his species meant both authority and annoyance. "Witness Sail, continue, describe the human response." My frill lowered slowly, and I tasted the memory again. lubricant, ozone, the faint sweetness of human food drifting through vents, even as war pressed in. Engineer Juno Kessler prepared a fold stabilizer device, I said. She acted without waiting for council approval. Talveg hissed, reckless. Juno, seated behind Chen, did not react. Her face remained calm, almost blank. Only her hands moved. She was rubbing a thumb across a scar on her other palm, over and over, like counting. Ruvik's eyes fixed on me. "And what did you do?" Shame rose in me. I relayed her orders. I assisted in evacuations. I tried to contact council patrol. "Did you try to stop her?" Talvek demanded. I looked at Talvek's shimmering skin, at the councillors who had voted for emergency protocols. "No," I said, because I believed she was right. The chamber murmured. Ruvik's third eye narrowed. Interesting. Deep Drift Station, Sector C shelter. While Juno prepared in the bay, I returned to the shelter to check on the children. The shelter air was thick with human breath, warm and moist enough to soothe my gills. It smelled of fierce sweat and something else, determination if scent could carry such a thing. Children sat on the floor, strapped to parents' laps, clutching toys. One small human, too young to speak, gnawed on a ration bar wrapper. Another drew on the wall with a marker, sketching a ship and a star and something that might have been a monster. Ambassador Chen was there, kneeling among them, speaking softly. "Listen," she told the adults. "If we have to move, we move. If you hear a loud bang, cover the kids' ears. If someone tells you to run, you run." A human man, broad-shouldered, voice strained, asked, "Are we handing them over?" Chen's eyes flashed. "No." "Then they'll kill us," another whispered. Chen's expression softened just for a moment. "They might try. But we are not alone." Eli tugged at Chen's sleeve. "Ambassador," the child said, "are you scared?" Chen looked at Eli, and I watched something human pass through her face, grief perhaps, or memory. "Yes," she said simply, "I'm scared, and I'm still here." Eli nodded, as if that answer made sense. A Halith child would have cried at such honesty. A human child accepted it like a tool. Second cultural assumption violated, that fear should be hidden from young to protect them. Humans taught fear like a lesson, and then walked forward anyway. The station shuddered again harder. A distant metal groan traveled through the walls. A few children cried. Adults pressed them close. Chen stood. Her gaze met mine. "Any word?" she asked. "Juno is preparing something," I said. Chen's mouth tightened. "Something big." "Yes," I admitted. Chen inhaled. "Deep breath, Sale, you're doing well." I startled. Praise from a human diplomat felt strange, like warm water poured on a wound. "Why are they doing this?" I asked, and I hated how small my voice sounded. Why would the council break the law? Chen's eyes went distant, like she was looking past the shelter walls into a history I did not fully know. "Because some of them never believed it was law," she said. "They believed it was a myth, a story humans told to scare the galaxy into leaving our kids alone." She looked back at the crowded shelter. "They wanted to test if we meant it," she whispered. Deep Drift Station, external hull. The first major complication came when the unknown vessel, council enforcement or imposter, it no longer mattered, stopped firing grav pulses and began moving closer. It extended docking arms like skeletal fingers. "They're boarding," the station RE announced, voice clipped. "Hull breach probability, 70%. Deep Drift's defense drones swarmed, little sparks against the dark. Point defense lasers flickered. The unknown ship's hull flashed with impact light, but it kept coming, indifferent, as if it had decided the station was already dead. Juno's voice came over internal comms, overriding the RE with a human-coded emergency channel. "All hands," she said. "This is not a drill. Non-combatants stay sealed. Security teams to junction points. Do not engage unless they breach." The Traxian duty officer protested. "We should fire first." Juno's reply was immediate. "No. We are not giving them a narrative." Even under attack, humans cared about narrative, about who fired first, about what history would remember. I watched on the hollow as the unknown ship's docking arms touched deep drift's outer hull. Metal screamed through vacuum as clamps bit. The station shuddered as if something massive had grabbed it by the spine. Then the hull breach alarms began. Junction corridor, deep drift station. The boarding teams were not pirates. They moved with council training, tight formation, coordinated. Their armor was matte black, their visors reflective. They carried grav cutters and stun rifles. They did not spray bullets. They advanced like a verdict. Security teams met them in the junction corridor, a mix of species with different weapons, different fear thresholds. Traxians with shock lances, Sawn with sonic disruptors. Two humans in patched armor with magnetic boots and weapons I recognized only vaguely. Juno did not join them. She remained in Maintenance Bay 14 building her wall. I was caught between, running messages, helping civilians move deeper into shelter zones. The corridor air smelled of scorched insulation where a breach had vented. The first stun blast hit a Traxian guard, dropping them in a feathered heap. The boarding team stepped over without pause. A human security officer fired a concussive round, non-lethal, designed to knock. It slammed into a Keth boarder and threw them back into a bulkhead with a crack that made my gills ache. The Keth rose again, slower, then fell under a second shot. The boarding team deployed a field emitter, a shimmering net of energy that spread across the corridor, making the air buzz. It disrupted our weapons. It fried a Sawn sonic device. It made my translator implant squeal in my skull. "They're using council suppression tech," the human officer shouted. The Traxian captain hissed, "Council." The humans spat a word in their own tongue, sharp. "Hold," Chen's voice came over comms. "Do not kill, we do not escalate." A Traxian screamed in frustration, "They will take the young." Chen's voice went colder, "And we will stop them without becoming what they say we are." That was the second obstacle, political and moral. Humans fighting not only enemies, but the shape of the story. The boarding team pushed forward, and then, from the speakers, the Keth voice returned. "Final warning, surrender the juveniles." The human officer, breathing hard, muttered, "Over my dead body." And somewhere in the shelter, a child began to sing. It was a shaky tune, words half remembered, but the sound traveled through vents and corridors, threading through the station's fear like a lifeline. Other voices joined, quiet then stronger. A chorus of thin human voices, layered over the clang of battle. I did not know the song, but I understood its purpose. They were reminding themselves they were still a people. Maintenance, Bay 14. Juno's hands were steady even as the station shook. She had rewired the fold stabilizer, bypassing safety interlocks. She had tapped into the station's main power bus, drawing current that made the lights dim in other sectors. She had dragged a shield capacitor into position, coupling it to the ring with cables thick as my arm. The smell in the bay was sharp, ionized air, hot metal. The ring itself hummed faintly, vibrating the floor. My frill quivered at the edge of resonance. "This will tear the station apart," I whispered, unable to stop myself. Juno didn't glance up. "It might." "Then why?" She slammed a wrench down, hard enough that it bounced. She stared at it for a heartbeat, as if considering the absurdity of tools in a cosmic crisis. Then she looked at me. "Sail," she said, voice rougher now. "What do you think happens to a species when you take their kids?" I hesitated. "They collapse, their future ends." "No," she said. "Not humans." Her eyes were very bright. "You take our kids," she said, "and you don't end our future, you turn it into a weapon." She turned back to the console. "I'm not letting them make us that." Ethical obstacle number 3, restraint. Even while furious, humans refused certain lines because crossing them would change them. Juno's fingers hovered over the activation switch. "We need a trigger," she murmured. "Something that makes them stop, something that doesn't kill the whole station." I swallowed. "You said you would build a wall." "Yeah," she said. A wall in fold space, a local pinch, a bubble that says, you don't get closer than this. My gill slits flared. That's impossible, fold space is not. Not to you, she said without malice. To us, it's engineering. A comm burst crackled in. Human security officer, they're at junction 6, 10 meters from the ring corridor. Chen's voice, Juno, status. Juno's jaw tightened. 60 seconds. Chen, we don't have 60. Juno's shoulders rose and fell in a single, controlled breath. Then we improvise, she said. She yanked a cable free, sparks flying. The smell of burnt insulation hit my gills, making them sting. She slammed it into a different port. The ring's hum rose in pitch, a sound that made my bones itch. Sail, she said, get out of here. I froze. I can help. Juno's gaze softened for a fraction. You already did. You got the kids sealed. Now you live, you tell the story. She pressed a small data shard into my lower hand. It was warm from her palm. This has the logs, she said. If I fail, you send it to anyone who will listen. Juno, I whispered, and my frill trembled. This is suicide. She gave me a humorless smile. No, this is math. Junction corridor, deep drift station. The boarding team reached the sealed bulkhead outside Sector C. They deployed cutting tools. The metal glowed. The smell of hot alloy filled the corridor, sharp and bitter. Human security teams braced. Traxians fluttered in panic. A Sorn officer's skin flashed warning colors. Chen's voice came over comms again, quieter now, as if she was speaking to someone close. To the boarding leader, she said, "This is Ambassador Myra Chen. You are about to commit the one act the galaxy has forbidden since the Scorch. You still have time to stop." The Keth voice replied, annoyed. "Ambassador, you speak as if mythology can bind law." Chen's reply was a whisper that carried like a knife. "It's not mythology," she said. "It's a promise." The bulkhead seam began to split, and then the universe changed. The human reveal. It started as a pressure in the air, like an incoming storm you could feel in your gills. The station's lights flickered, then steadied into a strange, dim red emergency systems reacting to something they could not classify. A sound rose, not from speakers, not from machinery, but from reality itself. A low, swelling tone that vibrated through deck plates and bones. It made my frill clamp tight against my skull. It made the Traxian's feathers shiver and flatten. It made the Sorn's skin go pale. The boarding team froze. Their armor lights blinked rapidly, their sensors likely screaming. Then, beyond the station hull, space itself rippled. On the hollow display, the black between stars warped as if a massive invisible hand pressed it inward. Stars smeared into thin lines, the unknown vessel's silhouette distorted, bending like a reflection in moving water. Juno Kessler's voice cut through comms, strained but steady. "Fold pinch engaged," she said. The boarding team leader shouted something in Keth, a clicking alarm. The unknown vessel tried to pull away. It couldn't. A boundary had formed around Deep Drift Station, a sphere of twisted fold space, like a bubble of wrong physics. Within it, ships could maneuver, but beyond a certain distance, space itself became thick, resistant, like trying to swim through gel. The attackers were trapped. So were we. "What have you done?" the Traxian officer choked. Juno's voice was calm again, as if she'd stepped back from a ledge. "I built a wall," she said. "Nobody comes in, nobody goes out, not until this ends." Talvek would later call it terrorism, but in that moment it was a miracle, and a threat. The council chamber would later learn the terrifying and beautiful truth. Humans had learned to weaponize the medium of travel itself, and they had chosen to use it as a shield, not a spear. Chen's voice came over comms, quiet, almost reverent. "All hands," she said, "hold your positions. We have leverage." Leverage against a council enforcement vessel. The boarding team, sensing something beyond their training, retreated a step from the bulkhead. Their cutting tools paused. The Keth voice returned on comms, no longer confident. "Engineer," it said, "disengage the anomaly. You are endangering Council assets. Juno's reply was flat. You are endangering children. This is lawful. Show me the law that lets you take kids, Juno snapped, and for the first time her calm cracked, revealing raw steel beneath. Show me the signature, show me the vote, or shut up. Silence, then Talvek's voice, no, not Talvek, a different voice, quieter, layered with synthetic masking. Engineer Kessler, the masked voice said, you do not understand the stakes. Humans proliferate, your deathworlders expand, you destabilize balance. Chen's tone sharpened. Identify yourself. The masked voice ignored her. We will take the juveniles, we will prune the future. The galaxy will thank us later. I felt cold wash through me. This was not enforcement. This was ideology. This was the galaxy's fear-given clause. Juno's reply came slow. You know what's funny, she said. You call us deathworlders like it's an insult, like it means we are violent by nature. Her breath hitched once. We're not violent by nature, she said. We are stubborn by nature. Then, with deliberate clarity, and we do not surrender children. Council chamber, orbit of Vera. Ruvik's crest rose higher now, agitation bleeding through his stone stillness. The fold pinch is forbidden technology. It violates Council navigation's sanctity. Chen lifted her gaze, and yet it saved lives. Talvek's colors pulsed. It trapped a Council vessel. A vessel attempting kidnapping, Chen said, Ruvik's eyes fixed on Juno. Engineer Kessler, did you knowingly create a fold hazard that could have collapsed the Emberline corridor? Juno spoke for the first time in the tribunal, her voice low and even. Yes, she said, gasps, clicks, a fluttering wave of alarm. Then you admit. Juno looked at Ruvik. She did not bow, she did not plead, she simply stated a fact. I admit, she said, that when you threaten our children, you don't get to decide what's allowed anymore. The chamber went dead quiet. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in Talvek's shifting skin, not directed at humans as monsters, but at humans as something worse. A people with self-control, until you force them to stop having it. Ruvik's voice came tight. Continue, witness sail, what followed. Deep drift station, within the fold pinch. The fold wall held, but it was not stable. Alarms screamed in maintenance systems. Temperature spikes surged through the station. Gravity fluctuated, one moment light enough that my feet barely held, the next heavy enough that my limbs strained. Humans adapted instantly. They shortened steps, braced with hands, moved like creatures used to changing terrain. Traxians stumbled, Sorn clung to rails. I felt nausea as my gills struggled with pressure shifts. Juno broadcast again. We have limited time, she warned. The station's reactors are overheating. The fold pinch draws power like a starving beast. Chen responded, voice controlled. Options. Juno paused, and I imagined her in the bay, sweat dripping, hands still on consoles. Option 1, we shut it down and they board. Option 2, we hold it until patrol arrives, if we can keep the station from cooking. Option 3, Chen said softly, we force them to withdraw. Juno's breath hissed. They can't withdraw, not without us dropping the wall. Chen's voice hardened. Then we make them choose a different target. A diplomatic reversal, born not from surrender, but from forcing the enemy to face a new cost. Chen opened a broadband channel to the trapped vessel. To the commander of Vera's hand, she said, you are inside a fold hazard. Your ship cannot escape without my engineers' cooperation. We will negotiate. The Keth voice replied, strained, you have committed an act of war. Chen's tone was razor calm. You have committed the first crime. Surrender your boarding teams. Withdraw your demand. Transmit your authorization codes for verification. Then we will release you. Laughter, harsh and clicking. Never. Chen's eyes, even through comms, seemed to narrow. Then, she said, You will remain here until your hull fractures from fold shear. The Keth voice hesitated. The confidence was gone now, replaced by calculation. You would kill us, it spat. Chen's reply was soft. No, she said. I would rather not, but I will not let you take children to save face. The masked voice broke in again, impatient. Chen, it said, you are sentimental, you cling to juveniles, we think in millennia. Chen's response was immediate. Then you should know what happens in a millennia to a species that decides children are targets. The masked voice snorted. Your first law is fear. Chen's voice dropped, and for the first time I heard something in it that made my frill tremble, cold certainty. Yes, she said, and you are about to learn why. Maintenance, Bay 14. Juno's hands shook now, not from fear but from strain. The fold pinch demanded constant adjustment, like holding open a door against hurricane wind. Her console flashed warnings: thermal overload, coils stress, containment drift. I stood at the bay entrance, clinging to a rail as gravity fluctuated. Juno, I called. We can't hold this. Juno didn't look up. I know. Then, she exhaled. Then we give them a reason to stop trying. She glanced at a secondary console, one tied not to the fold ring, but to the station's navigation beacon. Deep Drift had an emergency beacon designed to broadcast distress. Most species used it only when death was certain, because it flagged your position to pirates and predators. Humans had modified theirs. What is that? I asked. Juno's smile was tight. A message. She began coding, fingers moving with a speed that made me dizzy. If Council Patrol hears our distress, they'll come, I said. Maybe, she replied. Or maybe the ones behind this intercept, and bury it. She hit enter. So I'm not sending a distress, she said. I'm sending a confession. My gills flared. Confession. Juno's eyes were haunted. If they want to paint us as monsters, I'm going to hand them the brush, but I'm also going to hand them the truth. She keyed the beacon. Deep Drift's emergency transmitter flared, broadcasting through the fold pinch in a way that made the anomaly ripple. I felt the station tremble. The message went out. It wasn't just coordinates and a cry for help. It was a full data packet, sensor logs, comm recordings, video of the demand for children, the voice saying remove the seed, and one line of human text appended at the end. If you break the first law, we will not be the ones who end the galaxy. You will. That line would later be replayed in every council hall, every pirate den, every frontier cantina. It would become a warning and a prayer. Rising pressure, Roman 2. The enemy responded to the broadcast in the only way they could, by trying to turn the station into a hostage. The boarding teams, still inside the corridors, shifted tactics. They stopped pushing toward Sector C and instead moved toward the station's reactor junctions. They're going for power, Juno said, eyes flicking across internal sensors. If they take the reactor, they can threaten to blow us and blame the fold pinch. Chen's voice came sharp. Can you isolate? Juno's reply was bitter. Not without killing half the station's life support. A new obstacle, scientific and tactical. The enemy understood enough to exploit our own systems. The station shook again, this time not from external grav pulses, but from internal sabotage. A junction panel blew. Smoke filled a corridor, acrid, making my gills clamp in pain. Emergency shutters slammed down. In the shelter, children coughed. Adults covered mouths. Chen moved among them, distributing rebreathers. Eli's mother, eyes wide, grabbed Chen's arm. What's happening? Chen met her gaze. People are trying to hurt you, she said, and we're stopping them. Eli, overhearing, whispered, are we bads? Chen crouched again, steady. No. Eli's face crumpled. Then why? Chen's voice softened. Because some people are afraid of what you'll grow into. Eli stared, confused. I'm gonna grow into taller. Chen gave a small laugh. Brief human like light in a storm. Yes, that too. Then she added, quietly, and kinder, if we do this right. The masked voice returned on comms, triumphant now. You see, it said, your engineer strains reality, your station fails. Surrender the juveniles and we will stabilize your systems. Chen's reply was cold. You cannot stabilize what you are breaking. The masked voice hissed, then your young will die with you. Gino's hands paused on the console, her breath caught. For a moment, the whole bay seemed to hold its breath with her. Then she spoke, voice very low. No, she said. She turned to me. Sail, do you know what humans do when we can't win the way we want? My frill trembled. No. Juno's eyes were tired beyond measure. We change the rules of the problem. Climax begins. Juno's plan was not to kill the attackers. It was to make their goal impossible. The fold pinch already trapped them. Now she would reshape the station itself. Deep Drift's ring, she said, pointing at the station schematics on Hollow. Sector C is on the residential arc. The boarders want that arc. They think in corridors, indoors. She tapped another point. But this is a modular ring. It was built to detach in emergencies, a lifeboat concept. I stared, detach. Juno nodded once. We cut the ring free. My gills flared. That will vent the concourse. It will kill. Not if we seal properly, she said. Not if we do it fast. She keyed comms. Chen, I have an option, it's ugly. Chen responded immediately. Say it. Juno's voice was steady. We detach Sector C residential ring. We push it out of the station's frame. We keep life support in the ring. We use its thrusters to drift away inside the fold bubble. Boarders can have the station. They don't get the kids. Silence on comms, then Chen's voice quiet, cost. Juno swallowed. We lose half the station. We risk hull fractures. We may not be able to reattach. We may strand the ring in the bubble if the pinch collapses wrong. Chen exhaled. People will die. Juno's jaw tightened. Maybe, but not the kids. Chen's voice dropped to a whisper. Do it. The decision felt like a blade. Humans were choosing sacrifice, not cliché heroics, but mechanical, cold logistics. Cut away what the enemy wants, even if it costs you home and safety. Juno began issuing orders. All crews to brace points, she said. Seal ring junctions, evacuate non-essential systems, lock down the ring's internal bulkheads, and get every child into the residential arc. I ran, I relayed commands. I watched species argue, panic, obey. The ring junction doors sealed with heavy thuds that vibrated in my bones. Hydraulic pistons hissed. Warning lights flashed red, painting corridors in bloodless color. In the shelter, Chen spoke to the families. We are moving you, she said. The station may break. You may feel weightless. Hold your children tight. Do not unstrap unless instructed. A human father raised his hand, voice shaking. Are we leaving people behind? Chen's eyes did not flinch. Yes, she said, and they are choosing to stay to protect you. The man's face twisted. That's not fair. Chen's voice softened. No, it's not, but it's what we have. Eli's mother whispered, why would they? Chen looked at the children, then back at the mother. Because, Chen said, we don't trade kids for safety. A simple sentence, a rule humans followed that many species found irrational, but it worked. Ring Junction, Deep Drift Station. The moment of separation came with a sound like the universe tearing cloth. Explosive bolts fired along the ring junction. The deck jolted. My limbs splayed instinctively, claws scraping metal for grip. In the concourse, glass panels spiderwebbed. Alarms screamed. The air pressure dipped, and my gills burned as the station's atmosphere struggled to equalize. Then gravity shifted, suddenly lighter, as the ring began to drift. Through a small viewport, I saw the station's central hub recede, the ring peeling away like a wounded animal shedding a limb. Inside the ring, humans shouted commands, steadying each other. Children cried. One laughed hysterically, someone vomited. Eli clung to their mother, eyes wide. Are we in a spaceship now? Kind of, the mother gasped, hair floating slightly in the lower gravity. Hold on. The ring's thrusters fired, low and steady, pushing the severed arc away from the main station. And the fold pinch held around them, a warped bubble of space containing both pieces. The boarders, now cut off from their target, raged. They redirected toward the ring, trying to breach the severed junction. But the junction was gone. They were on the wrong side of nothing. The masked voice came over comms, shrill with anger. You cannot escape, it snarled. We will pursue. Chen's reply was quiet. Then pursue, she said, and die in the bubble with us, because you are not taking children. The masked voice hissed. You would sacrifice your station. Chen's voice sharpened. You forced the sacrifice. The boarders tried to fire weapons at the drifting ring, but their shots, crossing the fold-distorted boundary, bent slightly, scattering. Physics itself was crooked in the bubble. Juno's voice came over comms, strained, pinch stability dropping. I can't hold this forever. Chen asked, how long? 10 minutes, Juno said, maybe less. Chen's tone turned steel. Then we end it, in 10. Climax, no easy win. Enemy ship trapped in the bubble made a final move. It turned its bow toward the severed ring and began charging its gravitic drive, an overload that would collapse the local field and tear through hulls. A suicide burn. If it detonated, the fold pinch could cascade, ripping the Emberline corridor into a storm. The station fragments, the ring, all of us would be shredded or lost. The masked voice spoke one last time, triumphant. If we cannot prune your future, it said, we will scorch your path. Chen's face, in the shelter cam feed, went pale. She whispered, so that's it. Juno's voice was ragged. They're going to pop the bubble. Chen's eyes closed for a heartbeat, then she opened them, and something settled in her expression, acceptance of cost. Juno, Chen said, can you push the pinch outward? Juno coughed a laugh. You mean expand it, increase the volume, that's possible, Chen insisted. Juno hesitated. Yes. But it will dump power from the station's remaining reactors. It will black out life support. People will die. Chen's voice was quiet. If we don't, everyone dies. Juno inhaled. Okay. I was in a corridor between the ring and the main station, a narrow maintenance tube where you could see both structures through small portholes. I watched the enemy ship glow faintly as its drive charged. I watched the fold bubble ripple, straining like a membrane about to burst. And I heard, faint through comms, human children still singing. Chen keyed the broadcast one last time. To all aboard Deep Drift, she said, brace. We are about to experience significant power loss. If you can hear me, know this, we did not start this, but we will finish it. Her voice softened. Hold your loved ones, she said. Tell the truth, and remember why we are here. Juno's voice came, strained but calm, expanding pinch. Now. The fold bubble swelled, space bent harder, stars warped into curves. The enemy ship's silhouette stretched, as if it were being pulled by invisible hands. The charging grav drive faltered, its field coherence disrupted by the sudden shift. The ship tried to compensate. It couldn't. Its own weapon, reliant on stable physics, choked in the thickened fold. For a heartbeat it hung there, trapped not by human guns, but by the universe itself reshaped. Then, with a flash of light that had no sound, the ship's drive vented. Not a full detonation, Juno's expansion had forced an emergency release. The ship spun, wounded, systems flickering. It did not explode, it lived. And that in its own way was the greatest humiliation. Humans had stopped their suicide burn by saving them from themselves. The fold pinch trembled, then stabilized barely. But the cost hit Deep Drift immediately. Lights died across the station. Life support fans slowed. Gravity wavered. The air grew stale. In the corridors, species gasped. Some collapsed, emergency suits snapped on. Triage alarms blared in medbays. Juno's voice came over comms, weak. Power S gone. I can't. Chen's voice, urgent now. Juno, stay with me. No response. I ran toward maintenance bay 14, limbs slipping in the fluctuating gravity, the air tasting sharp with dying ozone. When I reached the bay, the lights were out except for the console glow. The fold ring hummed faintly, coils glowing dull red with heat. Juno Kessler lay on the deck, one hand still on the console, her face pale, sweat cooling on her skin. She was breathing shallow. I knelt, my delicate hands trembling. Juno, I whispered. Her eyes flickered open. She tried to smile. Did it work? She rasped. It worked, I said, voice breaking. They didn't take the children, the ship didn't explode. Juno exhaled, relief and pain tangled. Good. Her gaze unfocused for a moment. Chen. I keyed comms, voice shaking. Ambassador, Juno is down, she's alive but... Chen's reply came instantly, tight. Med team en route. Zale, stay with her. I stayed. The station was dark. The fold bubble still held, but weak. Outside, the enemy ship drifted, wounded, its boarding teams trapped in corridors with failing suppression tech. The first law had been broken, and the galaxy had not burned. Not yet, but deep drift was bleeding in silence. Fallout plus resolution. Council patrol arrived 2 hours later, not 3. Juno's broadcast confession had forced them. It had spread too fast to bury. Independent relays picked it up. Pirates retransmitted it for chaos. Merchants forwarded it for outrage. The galaxy's gossip network moved faster than council law. The patrol ships arrived at the edge of the fold bubble and hesitated, their captains terrified of entering a warped region humans had made. Chen opened comms to them. This is Ambassador Myra Chen, she said. We need assistance. Do not fire, do not enter without instruction. The space here is unstable. The patrol commander, a Varen with delicate fins, replied, voice shaky. Ambassador, council orders. Chen cut in. Council orders are compromised. The first law was broken. You will stand down and observe, or you will be recorded as accomplice. Silence. Then the patrol commander said, understood. Humans had forced compliance not with weapons, but with the threat of truth. Juno, barely conscious, guided the patrol ships through the fold edge, instructing them on vectors like an exhausted teacher. Med teams boarded the station fragments. Life support was restored in patches. Some species died in the blackout, unable to tolerate the stale air. Traxians suffocated. One Halith elder drowned in her own mucus when humidity dropped too low. Cost, real and unfair. But the children lived. The enemy vessel, Vera's hand, was seized. Its crew were Keth, but their authorization codes did not match council registry. Their command signature had been forged, using council encryption stolen from within. The masked voice was traced to a relay node inside the council's own orbit. Someone high had orchestrated it. In the tribunal, Talvek called it a rogue faction. Jen called it a test. And Ruvik, stone-faced, called it an unfortunate misinterpretation of emergency protocol. I watched, and my fear turned into something else, understanding. This had never been about law. It had been about whether humans would submit to fear. They had not. Council chamber, orbit of Vera. Ruvik leaned forward, his voice heavy. Deep drift stations suffered casualties. The Emberlang corridor destabilized for a full cycle. Trade losses were significant. Chen's eyes were cold, and children survived. Talvek's colors flashed. You endangered the entire corridor with forbidden technology. Juno's voice, still calm despite her pale face, replied, I used forbidden technology to stop a forbidden act. Ruvik's claws tapped his seat. The council will consider sanctions. Chen's reply was quiet, and it carried an exhaustion deeper than anger. Sanction us, she said. and you will prove to every human colony that the Council's promises are paper." She leaned forward. "Or you can do what your first law was meant to do," Chen said. "Protect the young, all young, because if the galaxy normalizes targeting children, you will not like the species you become." Ruvik's middle eye narrowed. "You speak as if you care about us." Chen's lips twitched, not a smile. "I care about the future we share, even if you don't." The chamber murmured. Then Ruvik asked the question that made my gills tighten. "Witness Sale," he said, "what changed in you?" I swallowed, feeling the weight of my own arc. "I believed humans were dangerous because they were strong," I said, "because they came from a death world, because they built impossible machines." I glanced at Juno, then at Chen, then at the rows of aliens watching. "I was wrong," I said. "Humans are dangerous because they decide what kind of monsters they will not be, and they hold that line even when it costs them." A hush fell. Talvek's skin went pale, fear finally honest. Ruvik's crest lowered a fraction, as if a stone finally acknowledged gravity. Epilogue plus teaser thread. Deep Drift Station was rebuilt, partially. The severed ring was welded back, not perfectly, scarred like healed flesh. Human children painted new murals over the junction seams, bright colors over metal scars. Someone wrote a phrase in small letters near the shelter hatch. "We don't trade kids." I visited once, cycles later, as part of a Haleth delegation. The air still smelled faintly of burnt insulation in certain vents. The deck plates still had a slight warp near Maintenance Bay 14. The fold ring prototype had been removed, taken by humans, stored somewhere the Council could not reach. In the concourse, I heard laughter again. Eli was taller now, helmet replaced by a simple cap, walking with a confident gait that reminded me painfully of Juno. The child, no adolescent, was explaining the ring dock to a visiting Traxian hatchling with gentle patience. "It's like," Eli said, searching for words, "it's like a bracelet for space, but also a scar. Because we learned something here." The Traxian hatchling fluttered nervously. "What?" Eli shrugged, the gesture loose. "That adults can be stupid." I almost choked on a laugh. Eli's eyes found mine, recognition sparked. Eli waved. "Sale," Eli called. "Did you tell them?" I walked closer, my frill lowering in respect. "Yes," I said. "I told them everything." Eli nodded, satisfied. "Good, because Miss Juno said stories are like bolts. They hold stuff together." My gill slits tightened. "She did," I whispered. Eli's gaze drifted toward the patched section of hull. "Do you think they'll try again?" It was asked casually, but I heard the fear beneath, the knowledge humans carried young. I looked up at the station's ceiling, at the lights, at the patched metal. I remembered the council chamber's polished arrogance. I remembered Talvek's shifting skin, Ruvik's stone eyes, and I remembered the masked voice, never identified in full, traced only to a council relay. "Yes," I said honestly. "Someone will try again. Fear does not die easily." Eli's jaw set, a human expression that meant stubbornness waking. "Then," Eli said, "we'll be ready." As I left Deep Drift, my shuttle passing through the Emberlang corridor, I felt the faint tremor of fold currents, the ocean of space humans had learned to shape. And in the darkness beyond the lane, my senses picked up a whisper of distortion, a ripple that should not have been there, like a finger testing a wound. Somewhere someone was learning. Somewhere someone was planning. The first law of the galaxy still stood. But now it stood for a different reason. Not because humans were a myth. Because they were real. And because, when you come for their children, they will bend the universe into a wall, and they will still save you from your own worst choice, so you can live long enough to regret trying.